Welcome to the Beyond Sugar Freedom podcast. I'm your host, Danielle Dame, holistic nutrition coach and speaker. Let's dive in. All right. Welcome back. I am so excited to chat today, Matty. Welcome back to the show and for this deep, awesome conversation that we're going to have today, and we'll see where it goes. But it's good to see you. I'm glad to always have an opportunity to chat with you on the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for getting me back on. It's funny saying that actually, because we at the moment, very much so, basically talk every day. And so it's like, oh, we're back. I'm like, we're back all the time.
Yeah, we're back, but like it's not like nice to see you again. It's like, well, I just was voice noting with you yesterday and today, and but now we're actually recording it so other people can get like an inside scoop to the hilarious conversations that we have. But also meaningful conversations. And this episode has come about as I was talking to you last time a week or two ago. No, more than that. One of our catch-ups. And I was like, I want to record this episode about like emotional eating being a good thing. And you're like, I want to do it with you. So let's see what unfolds, because this is something that's been percolating for me in the back of my mind since motherhood, since becoming a mother 7 months ago. Is this like curiosity of like, is emotional eating always a bad thing? Or can it actually be a good thing? And can it actually be necessary at times? So that's what we're going to dive into today. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've just firstly acknowledged like how wildly our lives have changed becoming parents.
Oh my gosh. And how fun to be going on that journey together. We have yet to talk about that on the podcast. So I'm glad you're willing to share those pieces, because I think for both of us.
Yeah, definitely.
It's so eye-opening, right? We can have all these ideas of life and what we should be doing and what we shouldn't be doing. And then all of a sudden you have a kid and you're like, oh, I was wrong, or that doesn't work, right? Or like, what the heck is happening here? So yeah, life's definitely been turned upside down for the both of us. How's it been going for you so far? You're about 3 months in to this fatherhood journey.
Yeah, it's going amazingly. Like there's obviously been some hard times and some extremely tired days and stuff like that, but I just did not expect how over the moon about this scenario I am. Like, I always sort of thought, I'm a man of responsibility. And if, I get there, I'll, in that situation of having a kid, I'd take on the responsibility and it'd be hard and it'd be difficult. But I hear that it's wonderful. And yeah, that sounds nice. But, I'm going to work hard and be the provider. And then Gabriel was born and I was just like, literally prancing in a meadow, basically. Like about how good, just how good it feels, like, and just how like besotted I am with this little kid, all of the time. I just want to be with him. I want to be kissing his face. I want to be holding him. Like, he's just so distracting in every way. And I didn't expect that.
Yeah. That's so cool. It's been really cool to watch you step into that and see that, like, yeah, those pieces of unexpectedness come up, right? Like you can never prepare for it. And you have no idea how you're going to feel until you're like holding your child. You're like, oh my gosh. Like,
yeah.
Everything's different.
I don't know if you've hit this phase yet or if you ever will, but we're at the phase where we're like, we want a tribe. Like, where do we get more? Like, how do we do this? Like
a tribe of like other parent friends or a tribe of kids?
No, kids, like a whole tribe that we created.
like your whole band, right? You've got to fill out the band. Yes. You're gonna need like a guitarist and a lead singer. Oh my gosh.
Exactly.
I am not there yet. I think it's wild that you guys are there. I definitely know we want more than one. I want Landon to have a sibling, but my body is like, like I'm still in recovery. They say I think it takes at least 2 years for the woman's body to actually like replenish. Especially because I'm still breastfeeding. Like my body's still being depleted on a daily basis, and and my mind, but I'm like, oh my gosh, no, I feel like I need a year of sleep first. And then another, which is probably unrealistic. It's not going to happen, but we're going to wait at least 2 years, let my body reheal and just to get some like grounding in our lives. And but hey, power to you if you guys are ready to go again. Too soon though. 3 months is too soon.
Well, emotionally, we're just, we're in the honeymoon period, right?
Totally. Yeah. You wait for it.
Yeah. But given Yarli's excitement to have many more, I'm going to sleep in another bedroom as often as possible to just prevent us from being in that scenario a little bit.
Don't touch me.
This is the responsibility that I didn't expect.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
What about you?
Um,
How's it all going? Like,
yeah, wild. Definitely a wild journey. It's been both like really high highs and really low lows. Like I mean, you're talking about all the magical pieces, but it's also really, really freaking hard. There's
yeah.
been a lot of challenges, namely around sleep and around like finding a new purpose in my life. Like even just for me, it's such an identity shift, and yeah, lots of change for sure. And I'm still sinking into it all. And some days are better than others, but yeah, overall, I mean, Landon's so fantastic and he's so cute and so fun. Yeah, and yeah, all the things existing at once, right? Both the joy and the challenges, right?
Mm,
Like that sleep, really, it's elusive over here. It's not so bad, but it's
yeah.
yeah. Which, has actually tie back to like actually talking about what we want to talk about today
Hmm.
is, I really have noticed how like the sleep deprivation and the tiredness has fed into some of my old habits around like, oh, I just want some carbs, right? Or I just want something
Same.
like, oh, just put a bowl of ice cream in me. And it'll give me that kick. I'm actually even having black tea right now, which is fine in my world, but I'm like, oh, that energy piece that I used to rely on sugar and junk for. It's like, okay, I gotta like keep an eye
Yeah.
on that. And it's like next level now with a kid. But yeah. Let's segue back into topic today because I think this is really
Yeah.
fascinating. Both of us help women like heal their, addictive patterns and emotional eating, right? When it comes to food.
Yeah.
And I know for me, and I'm curious like why you wanted to record this podcast with me, because I know some of the things that, and I know we're going to dive into, but I've been very curiously observing breastfeeding Landon and seeing this
Hmm.
as his like first introduction to having a relationship with food and what that's looked like and what it's felt like for him and for me and how he's needed and used food, and seeing this as like such an innate drive, right? Like an innate like
Mm,
human drive to use food for comfort and to use food for that, not just physical nourishment, but all these other pieces, which we could call emotional eating, right? We could,
yeah.
Landon is an emotional eater. I'm sure Gabe is too. Um,
Totally.
so how can something so innate be like so wrong? And I have a couple things and points and things that I've been musing about this, but I'm curious, like, what have you noticed, coming into this new realm as a father and witnessing Gabe, breastfeed and eat and use food in this different way, than you and I maybe have noticed, the work we've done with adults is very different.
Yeah, I was definitely aware of it early on when, when baby's crying, don't know what's going on, we're inexperienced. And so it's like you go through the list, is he hungry? Does he need his nappy changed,
Yeah.
or diaper for those over in Canada and the US. But like, you go through the list of like things that could be wrong. Does he need to be burped?
Mhm.
And often when you don't know, the go-to solution is like, let's feed him. And he's a pretty chill so far, pretty chill temperament, and it's usually pretty easy to figure out what's going on again so far. But when we don't know, or when Yali doesn't know, like the answer is put him on the breast.
Yeah.
And that usually solves everything. And that's, I guess, second to that is just the simple sucking mechanism that they even do in their sleep without, a pacifier or a dummy in their mouth. They'll even do that just to soothe themselves. That sort of movement. And even when I've got him, and we haven't really done dummies or pacifiers very much, it'll just be the little finger in his mouth, and he'll suck on the little finger until he calms down, and then can sort of move on to the next moment. But it's that idea of like he's doing the feeding mechanism. The pretending of eating is even calming him down. So I noticed myself observe that early on, and I'm not necessarily someone that thought emotional eating was always bad anyway, but it really highlights just like how deeply ingrained from the day we're born that we seek food for comfort, even maybe when we're not hungry.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. When we just need that comfort, right? And we have no, it is literally like what I've witnessed that it's our first tool for comfort.
Yeah.
It's like that first, like you said, right? And even immediately after birth, right? There's that like latching experience that a lot of women
Yeah.
have, right? It's like that drive to suck and to nourish is not just, it's not just about the food. It's about love and connection and like so many deeper
Yeah.
pieces that all feel like really good, healthy things. And then here we are as an
Totally.
adult, emotional eating. And I know, I'm the same as you. I've never thought it was like fully a bad thing all the time. But I think so many of our listeners and our clients, have come to, either identify as emotional eaters and think like, well, this is a bad habit I have. I have to kick it. I can't have emotions involved in my eating at all. And one of the things that I was curious about early on was like, okay, so Landon is using, or babies, anyone, right? We all at some way used food to soothe ourselves in the beginning. Is it actually soothing ourselves with food that's a bad thing? Or is it the shit that we're soothing ourselves with as adults? Right? Like, we're not, when I have a big emotion or I'm going to emotionally eat, I'm not going to go and cook a steak. I'm going to have a bowl of ice cream, right? Like, I'm not going to go and have breast milk, or bone broth. Like, ooh, I'm having a really hard day. I want a cup of bone broth. Like, that's not a thought. So,
Yeah.
is it the actual mechanism that's the problem, or is it the type of food that most of us are now trained to go and get the dopamine hit with something sugary or something bad, right?
Well, I think about it in the same way of like you use steak. It's very difficult to overeat steak because we've got these built-in biological mechanisms that say that's enough fat and protein, which is why a lot of people like the keto diet or like the carnivore diet because it's really easy to know when to stop, whereas carbohydrates super easy to overeat. So I think about it like that because it's not like babies overeat breast milk. They don't just go and go. They stop once they're
Yeah.
done. They stop. And so I wonder, and I have no idea about this. This is just an organic thought off the top of my head. But I wonder if there's something inside us before we're corrupted by, mainstream food. Is that like the emotional and physical satiation happens at the same moment of like achieving like it's like yeah like Yali's feeding, and the moment that he's done, his emotional needs have also been met at exactly the same moment. Whereas once we corrupt his, at some point, we're going to try and do 1,000 days no sugar. That's what we're aiming for.
Amazing.
And once we finally corrupt his palate, that gets distorted, that difference between emotional satiation and physical satiation with fake foods and franken foods and that kind of thing that don't meet that biological requirement of satisfied emotions and pain and suffering that's been alleviated, as well as being like, oh, I'm full now and I don't want to keep eating. Random theory.
Yeah, I love it. Keep us posted.
Yeah.
Keep us posted on the trial and the study that you're doing there, because yeah, that's really interesting. As you're talking, I'm even thinking about like the times where, and I don't know if you guys have had this yet. I'm trying to remember back to like the first 3 months, but
Mhm.
there's definitely a lot of times now that like Landon uses me as a human pacifier. Like
Yeah.
he's done eating, and I can tell he's no longer actually sucking for like getting any milk out.
Yeah,
And it's
Gabriel does
just,
that.
yeah. And especially when I put him in a bed, like he'll be asleep, but he'll still be sucking a little bit. And I just like wait till he lets me go before I sneak out of the bedroom. But it's, yeah. So there's like that, okay, you're done getting food, but you're still sucking because you still need a little bit more comfort, or you still need a little bit more of that like
Yeah.
connection. And I think there's a big, this is a breastfeeding like rabbit hole, but so much of it is around that like co-regulation and nervous system support. Like I
Yeah.
know like that is like like being held by the mother particularly. I mean, the father does have a role in this too, but for infants it's normally the mom, to have that like closeness and that skin to skin contact in the beginning, right? And those
Mm.
like close moments where we're like teaching him to soothe, or supporting his nervous system in being soothed. And I've experienced that lots, like both feeding but also like just rocking or holding on my body. It's like that deep like, regulation that they can't do. Babies can't regulate themselves, so it's like it's our job as the caregivers, right, to provide that. And the best way, the quickest and fastest way to do that is to feed them. Like, oh,
Yeah.
the breastfeeding is like, it's a magical tool. Ben will
Well, I
try for
wonder
like a half an hour to make Landon like calm down and go to sleep. And then I just come in and boom, magic, done. He's asleep. And he has a superpower.
I wonder if like thinking about the people that we have worked with over the last however many years, like I wonder if they go back to their childhood, like infancy, and we were to see whether or not their mother had postnatal depression, was not very good at regulation herself, as to whether these people then grow up to overcompensate with food because they weren't at the literal hardwiring of who they are in those early years, the first 7 years particularly, they weren't actually surrounded by a parental figure, but particularly the mother that's giving the food, by someone who could regulate their emotions, their nervous system, maybe didn't have access to certain emotions within themselves, love, care. A lot of the women that I've worked with, and this is not all of them, but have really hard mothers, like really harsh mothers as well as, and obviously got their own story, but just I wonder if there's some kind of connection with people that go on to emotionally eat or binge eat or be sugar addicts in ways that are really harmful, that didn't have access, even if they were breastfed, to that emotional regulation that you're talking about as babies.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Yeah, I could totally see that. And as you're talking, I'm thinking too, like this is really the conversation around those first couple years of developing a sense of safety in their nervous system, right? Which
Yeah.
is at the root of addiction in many ways, like sense of
Mm-hmm.
like, how do I handle heavy emotions when they come up? Are they supported? Are they loved? Are they held? Or are they shut down? Am I like pulled away from connection and put in my bedroom when I have a big emotion? Like all that stuff. That's something
Yeah.
that I'm, very much in the throes of like, okay, I'm aware that I'm getting to practice what I preach here and like wanting to help Landon develop a regulated nervous system, which doesn't mean always being calm, by the way. That means like having a big emotion and finding our way back to stillness when the time is right. And like building that base safety. This is like
Mm.
attachment parenting too, is something that I'm very much into. It's like that knowing that in these early stages of life, whether it's like those first three, I heard like sort of the first 3 years are most important, 7 also important, all of that, right, for emotional
Yeah. Yeah.
development. But is that like, do they know that they're safe, right? Like, can they
Mm.
feel a sense of safety in their body? And that comes from checking in with the caregiver who is regulated, right? And co-regulation with a calm nervous system. Um, so that piece, like, it makes sense to what you were saying, right? It's like these, curious like that, it's like that first trauma maybe we all experience is if we
Yeah.
are in a household with a mother with depression, or who doesn't know how to regulate her own nervous system, and it's just like chaos in the house. Like all these things really build a nervous system on a foundation of like fear or lack of safety, or these things that now we engage in addictive behaviors to help cope with. So kind
Yeah.
of that
Well,
hardwiring that's happening right now. It's like no big deal. It's not a big responsibility that you and I have at all. It's just tiny, but ah,
well, I would actually, not that I'm a woman and I know that everybody's got different scenarios and health situations, and sometimes their body doesn't play ball in the way that they want. But going into that co regulation thing, I wonder if as well there's some kind of connection with bottle feeding, because like and again, this comes with no judgment but sheer curiosity, my own curiosity to understand human behavior and psychology. But I wonder if because the baby and mum's body communication is so impressively like in like to all
dialed in.
down to these little molecules of like somebody has a breath like that's literally got some molecules in it that might increase the breast milk in this particular way or increase immune factors because of something that's around, and that skin to skin like is the transfer of that information. And then obviously the suckling is even more transfer and a much more obvious transfer of information. And it sounds a bit woo woo, but it's very much it's studied and confirmed, and that there's this two-way communication pathway between saliva, baby's saliva and mum's boob and nipple. And so I wonder if the more bottle feeding that happens, the less that they're able to get any level of co-regulation, or their
Right.
level of co-regulation is hampered because of the lack of skin to skin and because of the lack of that two-way communication between mum and baby, which means again we've got a baby or an infant that's in a situation where it has to solve its soothing by itself,
Right.
or in another way. And then that little kid grows up to be an adult that soothes in another way.
Right.
Chocolate, pizza, wine, the list goes
Yeah.
forever, right?
Yeah. Yeah. The bottle feeding conversation is interesting because I personally think that there's still so many benefits to like being held. Like I don't think it's all gone. I think if I am choosing to bottle feed, or Ben is bottle feeding, Like there's still co-regulation that can happen from being held,
Yeah,
from
agreed.
the sucking, right, motion. But definitely it's, I mean, it's never going to be the same as like really being held and being on the flesh of the breast and all of that, like you said, that two-way communication. But it's, we don't want any moms out there guilting themselves or shaming themselves for like using
Oh
bottles and stuff.
no, not at all, not at all.
But
But
it's
I'm
interesting.
I'm looking at it scientifically, like what is actually happening,
Yeah.
irrelevant of social judgment. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah. 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 You're so good at that. You're so
yeah,
good at that.
because I use a bottle sometimes. Like we use a
Yeah.
bottle sometimes, like
Yeah.
as
It
well,
was
and
life
that's
saving for us in the beginning. And,
yeah.
but now, interestingly enough, Landon wants nothing to do with a bottle.
Interesting.
So we've like either he's gotten out of the habit of it or we need to try different nipples on the bottle. Like we're trying to get him back onto it because it'll be nice to be able to have a little bit of freedom if I want to go out of the house for 4 hours instead of two. Um,
Yeah.
so like once in a while it's a nice thing to be able to have, but he wants nothing to do with it. So I was curious, like maybe he needs more emotional regulation right now. Maybe he needs mom more now. And he's like, I don't want this stupid bottle. Like, give me
Mm,
my mom, give me my boob, right? So we're just trying to like encourage and test getting him back on it, but also honoring that that's maybe not what's needed right now. But yeah, yeah, I think that's an
yeah.
interesting theory, right? Like there's so many layers to it. And the other thing that I wanted to mention too, and I'm curious your thoughts on, right? Like when we think about emotional eating, there's so many different like ways to define it, right? And I'm thinking about,
Mm,
okay, emotional eating. A lot of people, um, mix it up with like there's a big difference between using food to escape an emotion because we don't have any tools to regulate other than eating, and we're trying to get out of feeling a certain way versus emotions being present when we eat, right? Like I
mm,
think emotions need to be a part of eating. They should
yeah.
be a part of, I'm curious what you think. Like they should be a part of our food experience. I think some people have gotten so far into like food fear and they're eating chicken and broccoli and they
Mm,
hate chicken and broccoli and they're like miserable that they're eating, but they're doing it because they think it's good for them. And now they've taken all the joy out of food and they're not enjoying the taste of what they're doing. Um, I just wanted to like bring that out. And I'm curious if you've seen that with your clients or even with Gabe, like that, how important it is to have
mm.
emotions, maybe not in your opinion, I don't know, to have emotions present when we eat, right? We think of like the traditional ways of eating, we'd eat, and we're going to talk about like the social connection too, but we'd eat with friends, with family, and we're laughing and we're sharing about our days and we're like nourishing our bodies at the same time. And I think that needs to be a part of it.
Yeah, well, I think like as adults, one of the things that we do as soon as somebody walks into our house is offer them water and food, right?
Right.
It's we have a long history with showing generosity, with showing our wealth, with showing abundance, of building relationships by saying, I haven't poisoned this food, you should eat some. You know, like if we go way back when, that was literally, it was a display of a wealth and trust. You know, like if another tribe or another country comes over to invade, one of the first things that you would do is invite their leaders in for a huge feast.
Yeah.
And that's to show that, hey, I'm interested in negotiation. So I think that, yeah, food has been a part of our social connection and our feelings for a very long time. And in some ways, I just think, it just goes back to the food landscape of it being so devastatingly toxic that and manipulative, like the marketing and the branding and stuff like that, that, we eat these foods that give us this illusion of dealing with the emotion that we want to deal with, or of sitting with the emotion that we want to deal with. But because it's not like, going back to like my theory on the balance between emotional satiation and biological satiation being like the perfect balance with breast milk, let's say, we've now got these foods in this food environment that kids now sadly get from like the age of 1 or even less, where that is out of balance. And so, yeah, we go and eat chocolate and we eat a whole block of it or a whole tub of ice cream, and we still feel the emotion because it's not a whole real food that would have met those two needs at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. No, totally. That makes a lot of sense. Um,
Yeah.
it's
So
so nuanced.
yeah, it totally is. So I don't think emotional eating is a bad thing. I would say, I mean, in the Western world that we're in now, and acknowledging that it's probably not going to go back to hunters and gatherers anytime soon. Well, I mean, it depends, which rabbit hole you go down. But the I think because people are busy and they're overwhelmed, I think having meals which are fuel and nutrition, and like I've got to have breakfast. What's good for breakfast is great, but I also think it's good to have, like pizza night to look forward to with the family or your friends, or you go to this one place every week or every month, and you're like, oh, I can't wait to go and eat this and this, and I'm going to eat all of it, and it's going to be amazing. So I think there's a balance between conscious emotional eating for pleasure and gluttony and enjoying yourself and all of that kind of stuff versus like, leaning in the direction of like, oh, food should be fuel a lot of the time. And the good thing is, if you get that right, and I've eaten food that you've cooked, and I cook pretty well, and Yali cooks pretty well, it's delicious, and you actually don't want any other food. So my fuel food most of the time is also delicious, which I think is a really important thing that people miss, because healthy food's meant to be boring, or people aren't good at necessarily cooking whole real food in the kitchen that's in a way that's quick and super tasty. Because I crave many times emotionally eating healthy food. The great news is I don't overeat it, because again, it's got all of the right protein and fats and carbs in it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, so well said. I think that there's also that piece, people's palates have been hijacked, right? So
Mm.
even if they do cook healthy food, they're like, this doesn't taste like anything because I'm used to just eating junk all the time.
Yeah.
So there's a process, right, to getting your taste buds back, as I say, growing your taste buds back, so you can actually have that be the
Yeah.
case where it's like, oh, like our meals at home are delicious. And there's been many times that that's been the case for me too. I'll be like, ooh, I can't wait to have a bowl of ice cream tonight, and I'll like have dinner, and then we put Landon to bed, and I'm like, I don't really want it. Like I don't need it anymore. Like I'm satiated. That was a good meal. I'm
Yeah.
good to go. I'm like, so yeah, but that piece, just coming back, like that emotion should be a part of eating. Like there should be joy in the food that we're eating. There should
Yeah.
be like love and all these things. And then I think you and I have touched both on this, but I'd like to touch more on like the social piece. Because again, coming back to like watching Landon eat, I'm like, he's not eating alone. Like he's having a hard emotion, say he's crying or he's having a hard day, or he's teething or something's going on. He wants comfort. So I pick him up and I put him on the breast and he's eating and I'm there with him, right? He's not alone in his like
Mm.
emotional experience or while he's eating. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
curious if there's this piece of like, okay, so if we are, is emotional eating in secret the actual problem versus like emotional eating in community and in connection while we're also getting like the needs most of us just need a damn like hug or to be connected or love or to feel supported or heard or seen when we're going through big emotions. So it's like, yeah, I'm just really like curious about that part. And I don't know if you've witnessed that or seen that or thought of that, or if you have thoughts to add to that around like, yeah, the social piece that needs to be included when we're eating.
Yeah, well, I think I mean, as we know, and we've both probably talked about a lot on our podcasts, there's a lot of shame and guilt and embarrassment around expressing emotions. And as, like being in Australia, where, derivatives of England, which is even more socially like, don't express anything, pretend everything's fine, don't say, like, it's better to swallow your words and swallow your real feelings and just kind of never reply to that person again, or try and only see that family member at Christmas time rather than come out and say your piece and deal with it. Because often, you're not going to be met with someone that's going to deal with it with you, So I think as that's a society wide problem. I also think it's really important, and what's popping to mind is like shamanic experiences and maybe churches and temples, and there should also be places in order for us to have an organized society. Like there should be times and places, maybe each week, maybe each month, whatever, where we go and we're able to express ourselves and deal with our shit and talk about stuff. Because I think there's also an element that sort of bleeds in from convenience culture and the 7-Eleven that's open 24/7, that on Tuesday at 3 a.m., I can get my needs met by a chocolate bar and a can of
Right.
soda, round the corner for like $5. So I think there's a few elements there of that. Like it's so easy to go towards emotional eating as a solution when its level of convenience and its very low economic barrier is there, because then it doesn't even it happens on autopilot. Nobody thinks like, oh, I need to solve my issues by buying an Aston Martin, because an Aston Martin is way out of their price range, right? So I'm sure if chocolate was all of a sudden $1,000 a kilogram, everybody would have a very different way to cope with their emotional eating issues. So I think there's elements of like convenience culture that are a problem, and we need to sort of organize our weeks and times and schedules to have spaces where it's okay to express yourself and it's okay to not be alone, to let stuff out. Obviously, we're talking about babies and kids at the minute, and we should always be around wherever we can. But maybe it's part of that weaning process where we're growing these kids into young boys, young adults, that it's like, oh, okay, I've got to go about this in a bit more of an organized fashion.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, totally. It's going to be such an interesting journey for both of us to like witness and go on. And I'm thinking about that, like that social piece again, right? Is like the not being alone feels really important to me in the like
Mm.
the eating aspect. And that like
Mhm.
you're mentioning, the ideal, of course, is if we can have spaces to not be alone, to be in connection with the right type of people, so we can work through the stuff that we're trying to stuff down with food throughout the week.
Mhm.
And that is the scariest part for most people, you know, as most people who are terrified of their big emotions, or have no reference for how to feel, right? This is, I mean, the work that both you and I do, right? It's like learning how to get back to that place, because it's always going to be, as you said, convenience and cheap, but the convenience being like the emotional convenience to not actually have to deal with the grief, the sadness, the anger, the
Yeah.
whatever you're trying to hide, right? It's going to be, let's just like ignore it, cover it up. And I think like a thought that comes up for me in that is sometimes I think that's okay. And I've observed
Mhm.
this in myself. Like sometimes there's like, okay, I'm feeling, especially as thrown into motherhood, there's been times where I'm like, I'm so overwhelmed and exhausted and dysregulated. I'm just
Mhm.
going to eat something right now. And I know what I'm doing. I'm aware that I'm like emotional eating to not feel this feeling because right now I just can't. Um, and then at the same time, I have a whole basket of other tools that I also use. So this was one of the things that I also wanted to touch on today is like, okay, so right now for our babes, right?
Mhm.
Emotional eating is their number one tool for nervous system regulation, for helping support them, with big emotions. And there's a nuance that's coming up for me, right? That I'm thinking about Landon feeding, right? If he's crying, he's feeling sadness, perhaps, right? He's eating not necessarily to stop the sadness, but he's eating to help support him through the sadness. That feels different to me. It feels like I'm not
Mm.
here to like just ignore the sadness. And this is something that I'm working on as his mom, to be like, okay, I can see that you're sad, right? Like I can see that there's something big coming up here for you. Like let's be with it as opposed to ignore it. And then having emotional eating or food be one of many tools that they develop. I think you kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier too, but this feels really important to me is like he's going to over time, my job will be to teach him a whole bunch of different tools. So yes,
Yeah.
maybe occasionally like emotional eating is one of the tools for self-soothing in my toolbox, but it's
Yeah.
not the only one, and it's not my go-to. It's the once in a while. And all the other times it's I'm going out, getting out in my garden, I'm going for a walk. I just came from a cold dip with my mom's group. I'm chatting with friends. I'm like doing different things, right? Breath work or whatever it has be, you know, for you. Um, it feels like a tool in the toolbox, but most people have used it as their only tool for life, right? And I think that's the
Yeah.
problem. Maybe not innately, that occasionally we do that. Occasionally we're like, "Whew, I don't want to feel this thing right now," because maybe it's too big and you're not resourced enough to feel it right now. Like maybe
Mm.
there's some wisdom and like right now is actually not a supportive time for me to feel the depth of my grief, for example. And maybe I need to do that in a place when I'm more supported or in a different, you know, a different day. So right now I do need to like compartmentalize that and not be with it. So yeah, curious your thoughts on any of that. It's like,
Yeah. So two thoughts. Basically, I would say in the busy world that we've got, where mums, people, are so economically pressed, financially struggling, and relationships, they're finding maybe content like this for the first time, so they're really beginning their work, and it's all a lot, and the world's a lot, and finances are a lot. It's a really slippery slope to start giving that group of people a way to give themselves permission to emotionally eat. And so I would say that whilst I like the sentiment of being like, yeah, it's one of the many tools, I would say most people will arrive there in 5 years or 10 years
Right.
where it's a tool that I actually have control of and conscious choice of because I regularly choose other tools, right?
Yeah.
And so it can be a dangerous slippery slope, especially for someone that's like a full blown sugar addict that, really just cannot regulate in any way. And so I'd say, yeah, it's a slippery slope, whether, and obviously we all go towards this stuff when we're tired, when we're knackered, when we're feeling feelings that we don't know how to fully process in another way. And then I think as well, you can fall into oh, I know how to do the other stuff. Like, so it's like, it's like reminds me of people that were like, back in 85, I could have been a great football player. And I use that example to say, oh, I've learnt breath work. I've learnt emotional regulation. I've been to psychologists. I know how to do that. So I'm going to choose to emotionally eat every time because I know I've got the other skills. I've got them. Yeah, I don't really use them, but I know how to do them. And so
Right.
you fall into this illusion of sort of living in the past, or like, oh, I've got the skills. So surely that makes me a better person or better at handling this. So that's the first thing I wanted to say is it's a super slippery slope for tired,
Yeah. Makes sense.
just strained, stressful people, not just mums, but like people, anyone. And the other thing I think is, I think it's sort of hopefully responsible parenting is to be with the amount of knowledge and awareness that you and I have, to be able to raise our kids with a variety of options, and to be able to self-assess when they're abusing any of those options, and be like, oh, I've been doing this a lot lately, and I do have other tools and I'm not using them. What's going on there?
Yeah. Yeah. No, 100%. I'm thinking about this journey that like Landon, we're just starting him on solids. And I'm like, okay, what kind of relationship do I want him to have with food? Right. And I think there's also that like, okay, can we instill this tool of say using food if you're having a hard emotion, but with good food? We're like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
like let's, and how many times growing up, I know for me, a lot of my like deep rooted habits and patterns came from anytime I was feeling a challenging emotion, it was like, let's go get ice cream, let's go get some shit, crap food. And I'm like, okay, so instead, like, is there, I'm curious, like, is there a possibility that, it could be one of the tools that I introduce, perhaps, but it's like, okay, let's go, like, actually, like, let's go eat lunch, right? Like, let's go eat
Mm.
this together. Let's like engage in some chewing activity, which might be soothing for you, but
Yeah.
it's something nourishing. Like we're actually going to have something nourishing in that experience versus the sugar. And for me, that's something I'm going to have to keep a watch on because I feel very strongly about like really not passing that habit down to him, right? If he's having a big
Yeah.
emotion. And I know so many parents and zero judgment because this can be really hard and I'm about to live it soon, I'm sure. It's like the kids having a temper tantrum and the only thing that'll shut them up is candy, right? Or like
Yeah.
bribing them to get in the car so you can go to the dentist appointment. Like the bribing and the treating, like, oh, you were good today, like all those things, were so deeply rooted for me. And I'm looking forward to doing my best. I'm not gonna be perfect at it, but to sort of rewire some of that. And um, yeah, curiously see if there can be like this, like, okay, my kid emotionally eats, but with steak. Like, can I do that? I don't know. I don't know. We'll see.
Yes. Well, I was going to say, absolutely. Like, I get the same satisfaction from a well cooked and salted steak than I do from anything. I would argue it's better than emotionally eating anything else. Like,
No, you're
and
weird. You're weird.
but I actually think I've never talked about this theory, but I actually think that plays into that theory of like hitting the nutrition and the
Yeah.
emotions at the same time, which is why I'm such a big advocate for like herbs and spices and really figuring out how to make a dish, 5 dishes, 10 dishes, whatever, that you sit down and you're like, oh my God, I love eating this. Like, and I think that's so important because that's where I think like what you're talking about is like that's where the rubber hits the road with like emotionally eating good food. You've got to actually love it. It's got to actually
Yeah.
be so tasty to you. And for me, like a medium rare steak with like large salt rocks on the top of it, like, oh, I want to do it
Yeah.
right now.
Gosh, you got to come over and cook me some steak.
Yeah, I'm
We just did that
happy
yesterday.
to. Happy
Yeah.
to.
Yeah. Actually had leftover steak for lunch. It was so good. Yeah. Landon had his
Yeah.
first steak yesterday, so it was exciting day.
When you come to
Uh,
Australia, I'll cook you kangaroo steaks.
yeah, and wallaby, right? You're supposed to cook me
Yeah,
wallaby, I think. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, we'll book
delicious.
the tickets.
Amazing. All six of us.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, things are getting more complicated now for travel, but we definitely want to travel with Landon, but not yet. His system's still too new. Too new.
Yeah. But apparently, like traveling when they're this small is like the best because they don't run away, basically,
Yeah, and they just
or
sleep on
have
your lap,
opinions yet.
maybe. Yeah, totally. They're not allowed to be upset about where they're sitting, and they're free. They're free on the airplane. Yeah,
Totally.
yeah,
I wanted to ask you a question though, like sort
yeah.
of, unraveling this topic to different levels. But what what responsibility do you feel like the system has? Because I feel like, and I talk about big food and big medicine and big agriculture that all play into this world of toxic food that we live in. Because I feel like, there's only so much we can do when every supermarket we walk into was designed by psychologists, so like where does the parental responsibility start and end? Because our little kids are going to be influenced by this world as much as we try and do our best.
Totally. Yeah. Well, obviously, that's a huge problem, right? Obviously, there needs to be, in an ideal world, they need to take full responsibility for stop pushing, like, the food marketing that's spent just on targeting kids is
Yeah.
messed up, right? So, but I can't see that changing, right? Like, yes, they need to take the big food needs to pull up their pants and hopefully things are changing in the States. I know there's a big like Maha movement and lots of,
Mm.
food dyes being banned and things now, but they're just going to find new toxic things to put in. Um, so yeah, there's like the optimist in me wants them to take full responsibility and like stop doing that and only make nourishing foods available and get rid of all the processed foods. But I don't
Yeah.
think that's going to happen. And I think like as parents, we do carry sort of the full almost full responsibility of navigating that, right? And teaching our kids how to navigate that. It's like a game we have to play, right? Like how do we arm ourselves and navigate the grocery store, right? And maybe it's a game of like, let's find the most toxic thing in here, right? And we like teach them how to like avoid that stuff and why, because it feels bad in our bodies. And I mean, there's just so many levels to it. And at the same time, I can see for myself coming down the pipeline how hard it is going to be to like to let go sometimes, right? Like, okay, like the
Mm.
kid's at a birthday party and he's having a piece of toxic cake, like, but slowly teaching him that that's not real food and all these things that I
Mm.
think you and I are both going to teach our sons. I think is that's our responsibility, right? It's our responsibility to teach them how to navigate the grocery store,
Yeah.
navigate those big food and the marketers, and slowly teach them in kids' words, like why they're the bad guys, right? And why they're not everything in here is actually edible, and
Yeah.
should be eaten, right? Um,
I can just see myself like going through a phase where he's being a rebellious teenager or just a shit of a kid or being a delinquent. I'm just rocking back and forth at home, like, oh my God, it's that candy that I gave him when he was 8. I've ruined it.
right, right. It was because we didn't breastfeed for 1 month more, right? Like or
Yeah,
whatever.
totally.
Totally.
The burden of knowledge.
Oh gosh, right? Yeah, and I'm actually thinking of them now as 15-year-olds, and I'm like, okay, so a lot of my clients, I don't know if you've experienced this too, have thrown themselves into sugar addiction or these overindulgent, eating patterns because it was so restricted at home. And now it's
Mm.
like I'm free, I can do what I want. So that's also something I don't want to cultivate. I don't want to cultivate like such strictness around food that there becomes like a fear of food, right? Or like, I don't want my son to be that one. I want him to ask questions. I don't want him to be the one at the restaurant who like can't eat anything and he's so terrified to just
Yeah.
enjoy a meal at his friend's birthday or whatnot. Because of what might be in it. We have to just do our best, or it, in my opinion, just leads us down like a very stressful and equally toxic rabbit hole when there's nothing we can eat if we really start looking at all the toxins in the world. So there's like, building in, I think, again, it's that relationship. Like, how do we build in that relationship of understanding which foods are not supportive for our body, but maybe eaten on occasion? Um, Something we've often considered. Ben actually had this growing up. They had a Friday night treat. And I really love that idea. It's like Friday night, we're going to like pick a movie as a family and we're going to each pick a treat that might not be healthy to eat. And we're just going to enjoy that like once a week sort of uh, experience together. And find ways like that to build in some of the flexibility. So it's not like I've never had a piece of candy. And now the kids, in high school discovering candy for the first time and going absolutely crazy because it's like, oh my gosh, this tastes so good. now I'm hiding it and like binging on it and eating it whenever I can. Right. Yeah, I think it's more about like teaching them how it feels, and we'll see. This is all like, in beautiful, perfect world land, right? I know there's lots of parents
We're
out there
living
listening to this.
idyllically.
We totally are, right? We're like, oh, my son is 7 months old. He's never going to eat candy, and you guys too. And no, that's not going to happen. And
But I think you raised a good point, because so many of my clients and yours too, like the story is, oh, mum put me on my first diet when I was 12
right.
or 7 or like something crazy. And actually I also this year, just because the universe has gone this way, like I've worked with a handful of teenagers this year, whose parents are looking to help them lose weight or do different things. And whether they know or whether they like it or not, I spend a lot of that time not talking about food and trying to find ways to inspire and motivate them that have nothing to do with food. But it's just this idea that, yeah, we don't want to raise our own children in this environment that they at some point feel oppressed by, and then therefore wish to rebel. And I joked on a podcast yesterday. I said, with somebody who had a 1-year-old, and we were all sort of going through this journey in the last year of having kids, and I said, yeah, I'm asking this question with natural health and everything I know about sugar and mainstream medicine and all of that stuff. Like, how do I make sure he doesn't rebel against his father and say, I want all of the toxic food and I want all of the drugs from the drugstore, like, how do I do this? But I think what you said is important. It's not necessarily about stigmatizing it really, really badly as like only terrible, dumb, idiot people eat that food.
Right.
It's more just like, yeah, you can have that. It's just not in our cupboards. That's all, And so it creates an environment where most of the time what they're seeking, or most of the time what they're looking at when they open the cupboard or the fridge, isn't there. And so there's also not the reminder about it. And they might see it at school. They might come home and ask for it. And then I think it's then from there, it's a delicate balance, but because, these little personalities are going to be who they're going to be, as to, nowadays, like, people get a rule put in place and they need therapy, whereas, like, we're becoming such snowflakes because of how aware of pain and suffering and trauma we are, that it's like, where do you put in place structure and discipline and rules and like, I'm the parent, I'm going to make a decision that's about your health and safety, versus where does that then mean that they rebel or that they're damaged by it or limited by it? And I'm sure the answer is there is no answer, because every kid is different. And but it's that's the thing that I can see myself and Yali wrestling with. Like, do we give him this? Do we have this in the house? Do we not have this in the house? Like, is it a thing that's only on Friday night, and then 6 days a week he feels like, an oppressed victim? Like, you know what I mean? But like, it's just trying to figure out how it's going to work.
Yeah. You know what? We're not going to know until we're in it, right?
I know.
Our ones are like getting older and navigating it. And it will be really interesting to see, because I'm sure our journey will be different than your journey. And I know we'll keep in contact about like how that unfolds. And hopefully we'll keep all of you in the loop as well, listening to this, because
definitely,
I'm sure we're in for some rude awakenings of like, okay, your kid won't eat anything except crackers. Like, what are you going to do? Right?
Yeah,
like,
totally.
But yeah, I also hope that there's like, as we're starting solids, I'm like, I'm hopeful that like by giving his gut and his body a like fat and protein start to life, that will minimize some of that, like that deep craving for carbs, for sugar. We'll see. But, hopefully like having that be the baseline can help, versus, that's a curiosity I have. Most of us, like myself included, were raised on starches, right? Like whether it was pablum or, yams even. I mean, that's a controversial one in the like starting foods, but oatmeal and like all the things that were those soft, mushy foods that we started with. Fruit juice, right? Oh my gosh, fruit juice. That was my first love. But yeah, like how much that has then contributed also to this like, predisposal to crave those things.
Yeah.
But yeah, the oppression, I think, coming back to that, like the difference to me feels like a choice versus a rule. That's
Yeah.
something that I want to sit with. It's like, okay, we're choosing as a family, or we're choosing not to do that. And eventually, I hope my son will be able to make those choices on his own, and
Yeah.
it'll take lots of time and lots of commitment and probably lots of temper tantrums to be like, we're choosing not to put this in our body. But also letting him, there will be a phase where I want to let him try it. Like, I want to let him have a bowl of ice cream and feel like crap. Like, I think there's an important
Yeah.
learning point that we can then come back to. Well, how did that feel? Oh, I slept like crap last night. Why do you think you didn't sleep like crap? Oh, I had Skittles or whatever, right? Like, I think that is an important learning journey for all of us. I think that's
Yeah,
why all of our clients come to work with us, is because they're finally like, I feel like crap. And it's the food I'm eating.
totally.
Like, we need to have that connection at some point, or they're never going to know, like, or really embody and understand why we don't eat that thing. They're going to consciously be
Yeah.
like, oh, mom says, that's toxic, so we don't eat it. But all their friends are eating it. So can it really be that toxic? And then it's just
Yeah.
pieces there, right? That I think that's an important part of the journey too. It's like the experiment.
Oh, totally. Well, and it's yeah, just trusting as well that, like as we did, like I definitely went through a massive rebellion against my parents, as a teenager, definitely, and then in my 20s as I sorted out my shit. But we grew up with home cooked meals being 95% of the norm, and mum cooking a lot of them and us learning how to cook. And so although it took maybe longer than my mum would have liked, I'm now back to, like, we've got a veggie garden. I grew up my whole life with a veggie garden, right? And so there might be just this phase where they're figuring themselves out and figuring out how they fit in the world and in the family structure that we've created. And they might go through a period of 5 or 10 years where they hate that, and they're doing all the binging and all the whatever because it's like, screw you, mum and dad, you messed me up, like we all do. and
Yeah.
and then eventually arrives at like his healing, their healing, and are like, oh, actually, it turns out now I do a lot of things that mum and dad raised me on, because that's totally my own journey. Of sort of going on this rebellion. It was absolutely necessary because it fixed relationships, it healed wounds, it brought conversations up that needed to be talked about. Otherwise, I would have held the resentment forever, and that kind of rebellion. So I think as well, there's just at some point we've got to surrender to the fact that this is an individual in the world that's figuring it out, and we're their parents, and at some point it's going to be really uncool to take mum and dad's advice, and
Totally.
suggestions. And so just hope that, just as maybe for me, it's like for Gabriel, just hope that as I have come back around to a lot of the things I was raised on,
Mhm.
that we raise him in a way that we would want him to come back to the things he was raised on.
Yeah. Yeah. I hope so. I hope so too.
And if
Fingers
not,
crossed.
psychologists exist.
Yeah, there they are. I just saw mine this morning. We're good to go. But yeah, no, it's a good point too, is like all those pieces around food. As I'm thinking about, you mentioned your veggie garden, I've started a massive garden as well. And it's
Yeah.
a really important part of how I want Landon to engage with food. Like, I want him to
Mhm.
know how it grows, and I want him to be a part of hunting with us one day. Actually, he was even there. He was there this year when we got the deer. Um, so I want him to be a part of, like, okay, this is where my food comes from, and this is like really good and nourishing. And I want that to be a pleasant experience for him versus forcing him. So I think that's a
Mm.
part where a lot of kids will rebel. It's like they're forced to not eat sugar. They're forced to work with mom in the veggie garden every day. Like, you have to go do your chores versus it being something that they really enjoy doing. And then
Yeah.
whenever I'm forced to do something, I rebel against it hard. Right? I'm like, you can't. We're like,
Same.
look what happened during COVID. We're like, hell no. Like, try to force me to what? And like, let's fight that, right? So yeah, I think that's a piece of it too, is like taking out the forcing, but also like encouraging gently, like, come cook. Like, instead of forcing my kid to cook or to eat, like, that's a thing too that's going to be really interesting, like forcing them to
Mm.
eat their dinner, right? Or forcing them to eat their dinner and then they can have ice cream after. I mean, that was a big thing
Mhm.
that I was raised on, right? It's like, eat your meal and then you can have a treat, right? It's like eating the meal as a punishment and then you get a reward after. Like, I don't get it. It just makes sense. But
but
there's
it,
so many pieces.
yeah, and I guess there's a place for all of it, right? Because there's parts of me that are, because both of us have our Instagram feeds absolutely full of parenting advice now, and it's like
Totally.
overwhelming, right? But there's a part of me that, like, and I don't know if it's just the man, and maybe that's my job as a man, that is a bit resistant to the gentle parenting movement. And it's like, I need my kid to grow into a man that cannot be fucked with, you know?
Right.
And so that's unlikely to happen if I wrap him in cotton wool. And maybe your job as a mum is to wrap in cotton wool, you know, and be
Right.
gentle. And I'm just like throwing ideas around, but I feel resistant to always taking the gentle parenting option, because sometimes there needs to be hard boundaries. Sometimes we need to be forced. Sometimes dad does know best, you know? And so it needs to be a mix, because if it's all one-sided, then they'll enter the world and be like shocked by the other side. Like when it happens, it's like this whole gentle parenting idea, and the argument is, what happens when they get fired from their job and they just want to talk about it? It's like, no, you're out the door. See ya. Like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, there's. I want a bit of both. As to the proportions and scenarios, no idea what's going to happen. Um,
Yeah.
but but yeah, right now I feel I see so much of this gentle parenting stuff, and I'm just like, oh my god, my kid's going to employ your kid at some point. That's the
Yeah, no,
alpha in me coming
I
out.
totally agree though. No, I totally agree. And I'm speaking more to like the strictness around food, but as a overall parenting, I think that that's really important. I agree. I think like I don't want to raise another like coddled human.
Yeah,
And I think you're right. Like I think there is a piece where like the feminine and masculine, right? I think your
yeah,
job is like to be a bit hard sometimes, and mom can too. But
of course.
my, as a woman, like the energy is definitely more the nurturing and the more like, comforting piece, which dad can have too. Like it is an interesting balance. And I have no idea how that's going to flow for either of us. But yeah, that's very important, right? Like being able to take a no and to here's a boundary. For me, it feels important to be like, okay, I'm going to put a no, you can't do that right now. Or here's a rule in our household or a boundary, but explaining why. Like, I don't want my
Mm,
kid to just think like they have to blindly follow me everywhere. I want them to understand why we're making that choice, or why right now you can't play with that toy, or
yeah.
why we have to leave right now because the dentist appointment is in 10 minutes or whatever. I want them, when they get to a point, obviously there'll be years where they don't understand and they're just going to throw temper tantrums, but I want to
Yeah.
keep those conversations going so we can still have like the hard boundary, but it can come
Hmm.
from a place of love. And there can be, I think the kids, especially young children, need to know why. Like
Mm,
if we want our kids, and I know you do too, to ask why, right? And ask questions and not
definitely.
just blindly follow, right? We need to let them ask us that, right? And we need to be
Completely.
explaining, okay, here's a boundary and why, right? And then I want you to have boundaries and I want to know your boundaries too. So respecting when our kids say no, like, no, don't touch me, or no, don't tickle me, or no, don't hug me, or, you know, that's a two-way street too.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is
No,
turning
I
into a
completely
parenting
agree.
podcast, but
Well, yeah, in our perfect worlds that we have no experience with yet, and
totally.
and we're just going to try our best and probably fuck everybody up in the
Yeah,
process.
you know what? We'll circle back in a couple years, tune back in,
Yeah, we'll be
see how it went.
alcoholics. It'll be a mess. Like,
Our kids will have like moved out of home because they hate us. No,
yeah,
no, gosh, we're gonna do a great job because we're gonna do our best and because we care. And both of us, I know you well enough, right? We're both here committed to repatterning our ancestral traumas and these belief patterns and all the stuff that was dumped on us in childhood, and now getting to see if we can kind of shift some of those things, which is really exciting. And in relationship with food being a big one that we're both passionate about, right? Like, how can we create a healthy relationship with food that's not so restricting that they hate us and go rebel, but
yeah,
also it's okay if they do, and that's part of their journey. But yeah, and allowing emotions to be a part of the day-to-day language. I think, like, as we sort of tie all this together, I know you and I both like want to create emotionally intelligent children who can feel their
yeah.
emotions and
Hmm.
allow themselves to cry. And it's going to be it feels really important, especially raising boys for me. And I don't know if you feel that, like, I think there's a lot of stigma for men around crying, right? I know you've talked a lot about your
Mm,
journey with that even, and feeling sadness or feeling grief, or how to actually express anger in a healthy way that's not destructive, like all these things. And
yeah,
I'm excited to teach Landon all that. Like, I'm like, let's do it. Like, let's figure this out together so he knows that his emotions are welcome and thus doesn't need to blanket them with
mm,
food, right? I think like
Yeah.
that's the key here, and a lot of us adults never had that foundation, right? I didn't, have that foundation to build on, that sense of nervous system safety, and also the like, it's okay to feel. I know a lot of my
Mm.
clients, that's why they emotional eat, because it's not okay to feel. So I'm just going to eat and hide that emotion. So yeah, it's going to be an adventure. It's going to be an adventure.
Absolutely. I can't wait to watch you do it, to do it alongside you, to do it myself. Like, yeah. And like you said, we'll do some updates, and no doubt it'll take 400 left turns and a roundabout and a reverse, and, we'll end up on a different continent.
Yeah, yeah, totally. But also, I think we're going to do a pretty good job. Let's give
I'm
us some
going to
credit
try.
too. I think we're going to do a really good job with the knowledge that we have and the commitment that we both have, right, to parenting and showing up for our kids, and
Hmm.
not outsourcing a lot of that care and knowledge, right? Not just, yeah, like really bringing in that, especially around nutrition and food. And, this
Yeah.
is not having those things be a part of like our everyday lives. Like we don't have pharmaceuticals in our house, right? Like we just don't, these are not
Yeah.
things that we use on a day to day basis. Like, um, normalizing that, and then surrounding yourself with community. I want to throw that piece in here because I'm thinking about like
Yeah.
this
It's good ad.
healthy environment that I want to like raise Landon in. I want him to be surrounded by other kids that also know how to speak about their emotions, and maybe they can hug and cry together. I don't know, like, and be there. Like it's heartwarming. I've seen on Instagram some of these beautiful, moments where like there's a little kid that's crying and another kid comes over and like just gives the other one a hug. Like it's not like, oh, stop crying, you're a loser. It's like, oh, I'm here with you. And I
Yeah.
think that's so special. Like most of us just need to someone to be there when we have emotions. So I'm
Yeah.
hopefully surrounding, in that community with some of the other beautiful humans that I've been building relationships with, and some friends that Landon will hopefully have for his life. And I'm hoping they can do that for each other too. And
Yeah.
feels
Yeah, I have a
important.
friend that her kid is maybe 9, and she said he barely had any sugar up until he was 7. And I messaged her like not long after Gabriel was born, and setting out our best laid plans for his whole life. And I was like, "How did you do that?" And she said it was actually pretty easy because all of our friends are on board with eating healthy and
Yeah.
naturopathy and homeopathy, and so she said it wasn't that hard because everywhere we went there wasn't really the option. So he didn't grow this like I'm the weird kid kind of story in his head. And so that just adds to that community piece of normalizing all of this, and it being, whether it be the emotions, whether it be the food, it's like it's normal that people all bring a salad when we all catch up, or do a potluck and it's all home cooked delicious food, or and occasionally I'm aware, and this is kind of like what I said earlier about not having it in the house. It's like we see it so rarely that when we do see it we can have it,
Yeah.
because it's not at our usual gatherings with our friends and or at our family gatherings and stuff like that. So I think, yeah, community, like that's another reason that people come to both of us, is to be connected to other people just like them,
Yeah. Yeah.
whether it be us one on one or as a, most of my people are in a collective together, and they're sharing stories and supporting one another. And as the research shows, and everyone that's ever done a health degree, that your zip code or your postcode is more influential than your genetic code, and that's because we are tribe pack animals, and we adjust our behavior to fit in with the tribe. And so yeah, which plays into this community point. It's like it's so powerful to have the right people around you.
Yeah. 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 Very much. I'm excited to see that like support Landon, because I feel very confident with the people I'm surrounding myself with, which is really exciting because I can see they're all like-minded. We all get our raw milk from the same place. We all like, bring nourishing snacks when we do our cold dips at once a week. And,
Yeah.
and just like supporting each other with like just watching the other mom's parent. It's very in alignment with how I want to as well, like building an emotionally resilient child. And then like that social piece you spoke to, there's a point I believe where kids like learn all their behaviors and really rely on like the social piece versus the mom and dad relationship, right? It switches
Yeah.
from like us being the main dictators for lack of a better term to like wanting to fit in, right? Like that
Yeah.
group think. So who's the group that you're surrounded with, right? And
Yeah.
being really conscious with that, I think is a huge help, right? Not to say you can't do it if you don't have a tribe, right? But it does make it more difficult because, like you said, then the kid is like, I'm the weird one eating watermelon while everyone else is eating cake, right, or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, versus like the watermelon is the cake. I've seen some very cool Instagram posts. I might do that for Landon on his first birthday. It's like watermelon cake.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. I want to
Which
see
is
it.
still sugary, but definitely not cake. Yeah. Gosh, what a journey. Yeah.
I know.
So
I'm
to
excited.
sum up, should we sum up or like add any more points? But yeah, emotional eating is not always a bad thing. That's what I want to come back to, like the hypothesis at the beginning of this is I think there is a time and place, and I think emotion should be a part of food, and our eating journey. And we need to, as you mentioned too, I really like that point that you talked about. It's like, okay, the slippery slope, right? Like just because we have a bunch of other tools, are you actually using them? So being
Mm,
careful, like, as you're building out your other emotional regulation tools, maybe no emotional eating for now, right? But eventually,
yeah.
like you said, in 5, 10 years, once maybe, a lot of the listeners have a baseline of like where you and I are at with our journey, and having the toolbox so full of like a variety of things that we do every week, maybe it's not such a bad thing. Maybe there's a place for it. And maybe
Yeah.
it can be steak.
It can always be steak.
Yeah. So good. You
Yeah, no,
want to add anything else?
I agree. I think yeah, it's interesting just to throw around some ideas about where emotional eating might have began for us and these ideas of co-regulation when we were babies. And so yeah, I think community is the real thing that I would emphasize because yeah, otherwise you feel like the odd one out, and that's for adults and children, and that's everyone, whether it's you feel like the odd one out in the home that you live in, and so you need to attach yourself to a gym group or a program like ours or whatever. But like the point is that, yeah, like we're pack animals, and so making sure that the people that know you are on board or in some way accepting of like the journey that you're going on, or that you just find a group that does the same stuff, like, and I get that, making friends as an adult is more difficult and that kind of stuff. And it takes a little bit of courage to step out of your comfort zone and put yourself out there. But yeah, otherwise we fall to the values of the social group in which we are in. And if we're fighting against the group that has, wine with dinner every night and gets super smashed on Saturday night and like, and
Sounds
you're
like a
like,
fun group.
hell, I'm sure they're super fun. I'm sure they're really tired as well.
Yeah.
um, but the
Yeah.
point is, it's like if you're fighting against that culture in your social world, that's the yo-yo diet. It's setting you up to go like healthy for a little bit and then back, and then
Yeah.
healthy for a little bit and then
Yeah.
back. And so I think, yeah, putting effort into finding people, families, friends, communities, programs that make you feel not alone is super important because it goes back to the whole breastfeeding idea of you're not alone.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the not eating alone piece feels really like key to me. I feel like we've really come a far away from that. Like
Yeah.
not just like sitting around with, like you said, those friends that are drinking wine and eating pizza every night, right? That's different than, like you said, I think both go hand in hand. We need to find those right communities where it's normal to eat whole real foods. Like that's
Yeah.
just the norm, and the occasional pizza night. And then if we are going through difficult emotions or wanting to emotionally eat, like I don't have the answers to all this, but I know a lot of like the troubles and challenges for me has come when I was emotionally eating alone, hide in
Mm.
secret, or hiding it, back in the depths of that for me. And it's like, I wonder if like I was in community, that wouldn't have been maybe needed because I would have been supported, or, maybe it's, just a better thing to be doing it in community. So maybe that's a step out. It's like, stop eating in private. And if you're going to emotionally eat, go and do it with somebody who loves you and can hold you in that. And like, maybe there's something there. Like maybe you won't eat as
Yeah.
much because you don't need it. I don't know.
Well, I also maybe an unpopular opinion, but we call there's good emotions and bad emotions. And so I actually think, a lot of people say don't shame somebody for being fat, don't shame somebody for doing this or doing that. I actually think there's a really important function of shame, which embeds itself into accountability. Because if you emotionally eat in community in front of someone, there's an element of you that does not want to be shameful and be witnessed in that embarrassing moment. And so, I'm not saying that we should get rid of shame altogether. I'm saying that shame plays an important function for accountability, because if we were all truly shameless, our lives would be an utter disaster.
Yeah.
Right. So I
Yeah.
think shame and embarrassment, it's the social construct in which you tried to maintain yourself. So I think eating in community or in front of somebody allows us to actually be like, oh, I don't wish to slip into being shameful.
Right. Right. Maybe I won't have that third glass of wine because, like
Yeah.
nobody else has. Right. That's really interesting that you bring that up because yet literally just yesterday we were driving, Ben and I were talking about shame in some, I can't even remember what regard we were talking about it in, but in the like therapy realms, and Ben's done a lot of training in that realm. Like there's a bit of a debate and a theory of like, I think Brene Brown says there's like no, shame should be abolished. We should never have shame.
Mm,
But there is also, and I kind of agree with this, like shame serves a purpose in our society. Like there's
yeah.
such a thing as healthy shame.
Hmm.
And it's like feeling of shame versus embodying shame is a different thing as well.
Yeah.
And feeling ashamed of who you are versus something you did. I think Gabor Mate talks a lot about that. And that being a root of addiction is like absorbing shame as like I'm a shameful person, or I'm ashamed of who I am at my core versus I'm ashamed of a behavior. I'm ashamed of drinking that whole bottle of wine last night, or I'm ashamed of eating that junk or stealing that thing from somebody, right? Like these social
Yeah.
constructs like you're talking about that are more in like our shameful behaviors that can help us, can for some, keep us more accountable to like doing the right thing and doing things that might support us. So that's a whole nother podcast on shame,
Yeah,
but
totally. I know. I've realized I'm just
but
like
yeah,
opening
way to
another
go,
can of
Matty.
worms.
Way to go.
Trying to wrap
Well, that's
up. Trying to
okay.
wrap up.
That's okay. Yeah, Landon needs some food.
Yeah.
So wrapping it up here, but yeah, I think I'm glad that you brought that piece out because that can, yeah, there's a difference between like internalizing the shame because it is a slippery slope when we're talking about shame for eating. I felt shame
Mm,
myself, and it's like personal shame of like, oh, I shouldn't be eating this thing, or, um, and like that on my own never really stops me from doing the behavior. But in a
hmm.
social setting, it definitely would.
Yeah.
So yeah, interesting. Accountability. Shame as your accountability buddy. Stay tuned for part 2 of this episode.
What a note to leave on.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. 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 Thanks for throwing in some like rabbit hole conversations here as we wrap up. But
Oh,
yeah,
thanks for
so
having me.
good.
Like, yeah, and I love that we'll do this and that both our audiences will get to hear this, because I think, yeah, this is a really unique conversation, and I haven't heard anyone in our world of emotional binge sugar, talk about it to this level of like breastfeeding and beyond.
Yeah.
We all talk about trauma and childhood, but yeah, I think this is a kind of new conversation, which is cool. I think people will like it.
Fun. I hope so. If you do, like, subscribe, leave a comment, all the things. We're going
Yeah.
to share this episode on both of our podcasts. So, actually, as we wrap up, maybe that's a good, obviously, I'll have it all in the show notes, but do you want to shout out, Matty, to where people can find you and listen to some more of your stuff as well?
Yeah, amazing. So, How to Not Get Sick and Die is my podcast. So, if you're listening on Danny's right now, come and hang out on mine. Danny's been on my show like, I don't know, 5 or 6 times. So, come and check that out. Otherwise, just Instagram at The Real Weight Loss Coach. And yeah, you can just type in my name anywhere, basically, Matty Lansdown, and I'll pop up on YouTube and Instagram and all the
Are you on the
places.
Google? Can we Google you? Or are you on the Google?
I'm on the Google.
Totally. Yes, great. I'll
so,
make sure to
so
have
yeah.
those links below too.
And where are you?
I'm here. I don't even know half the time where the heck I am. Like, what day is it? Yeah. How many hours of sleep did I get last night? Yeah. For those who are listening to this episode over on your show, my podcast is called Beyond Sugar Freedom. You can find me there. And my website, danielledame.com, has some good free resources. And I'm actually not very active anywhere else right now because I'm still sort of in maternity leave. So come check out the podcast. That's kind of the best spot to dive in to some areas. But yeah, new
Amazing.
adventures unfolding for both of us. I'm so excited for this journey with
Yeah,
you.
me too. I
Yeah.
can't wait to get to the 6 of us together in real life.
Oh man, it'll happen one day. Yeah. Yeah. And then we'll do like a 6-way podcast episode. We'll ask the kids, like, wait till they can talk and ask them, like, what do you think about food? Oh, that'll be good. It'll be good.
Oh, I would love that. That'll be good for virality, these cute kids as
Oh,
well.
totally. We'll get them. We'll be the #1 podcast. Oh my goodness. Yeah. No, this is to touch on what you just mentioned, like really great topic. This is why I wanted to dive into this because it's like just not all of them, but a lot of my thoughts on emotional eating has really been kind of turned on its head since like witnessing the root of emotional eating in my breastfeeding journey and with Landon. And, it's been a blast to get curious with you and be able to kind of riff on these areas. Like, is it always bad? Is it always like, yeah, I think it's never black and white. There's some areas here and lots to consider in this episode for those listening. So I hope you've taken away some things and go spend some time with your journal and get curious for yourself on some of these things that maybe popped up for you.
Yeah, and, I agree.
Yeah. Thanks for hanging out, Matty. Always a good time. I'm sure I'll see you in our private chats soon and we'll debrief about this. And yeah, let's stay in touch for sure about how this goes. All these beautiful ideas we have. Yeah, I'm just, like I said, just starting solid. So it's going to be really interesting, like to just witness that next level of like relationship with food journey and how I can play a role in that and make it fun. And wish us luck.
Yes, we need it.
Yeah. Everybody out there. Yeah. Send help. No, it's going to be great.
Amazing. Well, thanks for having me and good to see you. And we'll probably chat in like 2 hours in a message.
Maybe. Yeah. Gonna go feed Landon now, give him some emotional comfort. And although he's not crying, but he's long overdue for his next feed. So I'm sure he's hungry.
Yeah.
for like real physical nourishment with the side benefit of comfort, even if he doesn't need it. But yeah. Yeah. Thanks again for hanging out. And everyone listening to this, thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to like, subscribe, do all the things. I don't know what we do on podcasts anymore. Leave a review, all those fun things for both of our shows. Come follow both of us and stay tuned for more awesome conversations.
Amazing. See you, everyone.
Right, bye. Thanks for tuning in to another episode. If you're loving what we talked about today, please remember to subscribe, leave a 5-star review, and share this episode with someone you love. It helps me incredibly reach more people and help more women who need this information. And if you're ready to go deeper into discovering your unique root causes and patterns keeping you hooked on sugar year after year, be sure to come and check out the brand new free root cause quiz that will give you actionable items to finally begin healing your relationship with sugar from the inside out. You can find the link to download this quiz and other amazing resources in the show notes below. I also wanted to just take a quick minute to share a disclaimer. The information provided in this podcast is for general purposes only and is not at all intended to be professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. And as much as I do my best to bring you up-to-date and accurate information, please remember that I'm also sharing my opinions, stories, and ideas that are ultimately not supported by mainstream science. My personal advice should not be taken as professional advice, and you are always encouraged and advised to consult with your own healthcare practitioner before making any changes to your health and wellness routine. This podcast is intended to inspire and offer you alternative views to healing your relationship with food, mind, and body. It is up to each listener to take responsibility for their own health and wellness decisions. I hold no liability or responsibility for your results or lack thereof. Thanks for tuning in to the Beyond Sugar Freedom podcast, and we can't wait to see you in the next episode. Let's go.